What's up, fellas? Lady fellas. Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got another deck profile for you. This time, it's going to be Magical Musketeers, a deck that I always thought was a cool concept, but when I got back into the game back in like early 2018, very late 2017, I had already heard the rumors that this and Weather Painters were very hyped, and then flopped completely. So I kind of steered away from the deck, but then as I come back around and I just realized that I'm a huge control-loving player, I love control strategies, this deck's better than people think it is. I mean, is it amazing? No. But if it gets its stuff going and you get your control like set up, it can be very hard to break through it. So I really enjoy this deck. It's exactly what I like. I don't like super heavy special summon decks, but when the Link Monster comes out, it adds a ton of that, capability of being able to just spam the board much easier. So let's jump right into the list at least. Before I jump into the list, one more thing is, sorry that I have to keep doing, deck profiles on Dueling Nexus here, but I'm missing some classic staples. I've said it in the last deck profile, the Lair of Darkness update, but until I get like staples, I don't want to bring you guys like deck profiles that have like a ton of proxies. Like it's not worth it to me. That's so lame. Like, and if I do have them, I'm totally down to go back to like the in-person, cards, TCG, deck profiles. But until then, I'm going to do them like this. This is the best way to do them. This is how I test anyway on websites like this. I like the layout of Nexus when you're looking at a deck profile the most. But yeah, let's get right into the list. So, as for me, I play a pretty standard monster lineup that consists of 3 Caspar, 3 Starfire, 3 Kid Brave, and 2 Doc. If you don't know how the Magical Musketeers work and you're new to the strategy, you're new to the game, I'll give you a brief overview. So pretty much Magical Musketeers work like this. You have your Musketeers and you have your muskets. The muskets are the spells and traps, the Musketeers are your monsters. All the monsters have an effect that says while they're on the field, they allow you to use your muskets, your spells and traps, straight from your hand at any point. They're all quick effects, which means you can activate spells on your opponent's turn straight from the hand. You can activate traps on your first turn without setting them straight from the hand, and that's pretty much what they do. And then they also all have a second effect that pretty much triggers when a spell or trap card is activated in their column. That's a hard once per turn, but it's all some kind of plus. Caspar, when a spell or trap is activated in his zone, he will search you a card. Starfire will special summon a level 4 or lower Magical Musketeer straight from the deck. Kid Brave will let you discard a Magical Musket card to draw 2 in its place, and Doc will let you add a Magical Musket card from your graveyard back to your hand. So they all plus you in some kind of way. Your goal is to just always have one of these up, because as long as you have one of these up, they're making all of your Magical Muskets alive, and they're essentially hand traps because you just activate them from your hand at any point as long as you control the Musketeers. So really interesting dynamic. It's good that they're all hand traps, but it's also bad in the fact that, like, if you don't have both the monster and the spells and traps, you just lose, because like you need both. You need the monster to make the spells and traps work, and then the spells and traps are insanely powerful, but they can't be activated without the monster. So you kind of need a good combination of both. That's why you play actually 11, which is probably more Magical Musketeers than like a lot of decks, stun decks like this, or control decks would play normal summons, but you kind of got it because you just got to see one in your opening hand really bad. So that's what they do, and they do it pretty well. Also, their stats are kind of low, so that's another problem as well, but your spells and traps are very helpful with mitigating that. I mean, 1200 attack for Caspar, but the 2000 booties are kind of nice. 13 and 17 for Starfire, 16 and 200 for Kid Brave, and 14 and 12 for Doc. So nothing crazy, but stat wise, but they all do what they do, and they just generate you advantage. Just they're all +1s. So that is that. As far as the hand traps go, I only played 2 Ash Blossom and 2 Impermanence. If you didn't hear, the current format is not a super necessity for hand traps. You don't really need a ton of hand traps to make do in this format. There are some like semi-combo decks, but like not even like crazy combo decks, like Goki or Dark Warrior. Those aren't really hanging around as much anymore, so you don't really need to worry about hand traps as much, but there are some decks that do combo a little bit, so it is nice to have these hand traps to at least be able to just not let your opponent play completely for free going first. So I only play 4. Hopefully you see it if you're going second against something like that, but if not, you still will have a chance. Then when we get into the spell cards, we start with the Magical Musket spells. We start with 3 Cross Domination. This card is the best one by far. It's not even close. So it just says if you control a Magical Musketeer, target one face-up monster on the field. Until the end of this turn, its attack and defense becomes 0, both of them, and its effects are negated. So it's literally like an effect negation, and it's like a battle trap all at the same time. So it can be used offensively to help break boards. If your opponent has like some kind of monster floodgate effect or monster negate, you can bait the negate or negate them so they can't negate. Or you can use it in your battle phase to make them 0, so any of your musketeers can beat over. And then vice versa, you can use it as an interruption on your opponent's turn, and if they attack into you and they don't know what you have in your hand, you can chain that to make their monster 0, and then they'll pretty much just blow up themselves attacking into a musketeer. So this card is just super versatile. It can be used in a bunch of different ways. Really, really good card. I do play the 1 Steady Hands. Not a lot of people like to play Steady Hands. It pretty much just doubles the attack and defense of a musketeer on board, but it can't attack directly that turn, so it's not that crazy. You're usually using this as board breaking / battle phase defensive techniques. It can be used offensively and defensively, kind of the same way that Cross Domination can, where offensively, it helps you break boards. You just double a musketeer so it can get over something, or if they attack into you, which a lot of people are going to be forced to try and out you via battle because all your monsters are pretty weak. So sometimes, even if you're like negating their effects and they can't get effects off and stuff, sometimes they literally just will try to go into battle phase and overwhelm you with big beat sticks because it can work given the right situation. So I think this card's really nice. And all the musketeers, all the musket cards, so musketeer monsters and musket spells and traps, they're all hard wins returns. So as far as breaking boards go, I wanted an extra card where if I needed to break a board then and now, it had to be done. I had a second card where I could use, where I could search it, and then I'd have it and Cross Domination to go break a board in the battle phase. Just because Cross Domination is a hard wins return, so even if you have 2, the second one's dead for that turn at least. So I did want another card that could help break boards like that. And it comes up all the time. Next, something you really have to play in this deck is this is a going first deck. It's a control-based strategy. You need to play cards that you want to activate going first under a Magical Musketeer to trigger their effects whilst also gaining advantage and increasing consistency. So all the Musketeers' effects trigger when a spell or trap is activated in their column, and it's generically any spell or trap. It can be your opponent's spell or trap, it could be your spell and trap, it doesn't have to be a Magical Musket card. So you just need spell cards you can activate going first to not only get you advantage and increase the consistency for your deck, but also to trigger off your Musketeer effects, to search, to special, to draw, to add back from grave, to do all your things. So Desires is key. I looked at Pot of Extravagance for this deck, but it doesn't work because Extravagance has to be the first card you activate in your main phase 1, so you wouldn't have a chance to get a Musketeer on board so that you could trigger their effects with the Extravagance. So even though you don't really use your extra deck a whole lot in this deck, Extravagance still doesn't work because you just need a card that can trigger their effects. So did not opt to play that, which is fine because it's like an $80 card right now, so cool. But Desires works really well also. And I know what you're saying, like 3 Desires in a 40 card deck. John, that's insane. I know it seems kind of crazy, but it's not that bad just because normally what you worry about with 3 Desires is like, I don't want Desires into Desires because then my Desires becomes a 1-for-1, and I also possibly banished key cards from my deck in the process. Whereas this card, you're almost always activating it underneath of a Musketeer, so it's always a +2. It's always at least a +1. Like, even if you Desires into Desires, you have the other cards you drew off the Desires, and you probably got a search or a special or a draw 2 off of, one of your Musketeers, so you +1'd off of them. So literally you still ended up with a +1, even if you Desires into Desires. And if you don't, it's a +2. So the ceiling is raised and you're safer that way. Where like you're still at least getting a +1 even if you desires into desires. And I just think it's right. It's just such a good consistency card for this deck. I've had duels where it's been tough, where I've been forced to activate 2 and my resources were super depleted. But you know, you gotta take it because there's not that many good draw cards that you can even use in this deck. Which leads me into my next spicy tech. This is like the one spiciest tech that I play. A lot of my stuff is fairly staple for this deck, but you kind of have to play specific cards in this deck, so there's not a ton of wiggle room. But Magical Mallet is my spicy tech. This card just says shuffle any number of cards from your hand into your deck, then draw the same number of cards. Shuffling is not cost, so if this card gets ashed, then you just don't shuffle. You just don't shuffle anything, which is really good because if this effect said shuffle as cost and then draw, then you just lose if you get ashed on this card because you shuffle 2 into your deck and your opponent activates ash. You literally just went -3 and you lose the duel. So that's really nice that they can negate this, but you're only minusing the 1, but so is your opponent, so it's a 1-for-1, whatever. But this card's really nice. 1, it triggers your Musketeers on board, and it fixes your hands. If you didn't notice, we play a ton of 3-ofs that are hard once per turn. You look at the monsters. That's another reason I love this card, because like I was saying earlier, is like you play 11 Musketeers, whereas normally in a heavy normal summon deck that's like pretty much you only normal summon your monsters from the hand, you play 11. Most decks probably play 8, 9, maybe 10. So you're playing a heavy monster lineup, so you're very liable to see 2, even 3 sometimes in your hand. This card is really nice to just shuffle back the ones that you don't need at that time and take a chance at drawing, you know, more readily available cards, more spells and traps that are going to help you, you know, do things right then and there, which is really nice. Not to mention they're all once per turns. Cross Domination, hard once per turn. Desires, hard once per turn. So this could be nice if you desires into desires. Just shuffle one of the desires back to get another card. Hopefully it's better. Ties of the Brethren, hard once per turn, hard once per turn, hard once per turn. You play like 9 different 3-ofs that are hard once per turn, so this card is nice to just shuffle back in. That being said, even if you activate this under a Musketeer, it's still just a neutral, a break even, because generically this card's a -1. You use this card, and then you don't actually gain advantage with like whatever you draw. You just draw exactly what you put back into your deck, so it's generally a -1. Even if you activate a Musketeer, it's still a neutral or a break even, but it's still, I think, good enough to play here. So yeah, Magic come out, my spicy tech. We'll see in the future if new cards come out, if it'll be worth dropping, but I like it so far. It's been really good to me so far. 1 Upstart Goblin, you got to play in a deck like this. This is like Sky Striker, where like I don't actually believe in playing Upstart Goblin unless if it's only at 1 on the ban list, because I don't think it increases your consistency enough where it's really worth playing. But if it's a deck that gets extra value out of it, like just being able to trigger your monster effects with Upstart, then I'm down to play it. Just like how Sky Striker just wants to put an extra spell engrave. Great, extra value, I'm down to play it then. But if it doesn't have extra value, I don't like playing it. But it does, so I like playing it here. 3 Ties of the Brethren, there's not much to say here. This is just how you get more monsters out much faster. This is your one like power card where, if you don't know, Caspar, Kid Brave, and Doc are all level 3 light fiends. So there you go, special two more, whichever 2 you don't have, straight from the deck, and also trigger an effect on field as well. Just really good in the deck. Instant Fusion is really nice. It's one of the best cards because it's good going first and good going second. It's really good going second, pretty good going first. Going first just helps make your board a little bit better, but not crazy, you know. And also lets you play through hand traps. But going second, you just make Thousand Eyes Restrict and steal an opponent's monster. So it's like mind control, but you also get like a free monster out of it as well, which is really nice. Then 2 Mind Control. This is the only card I play in my deck right now that is like unusable going first, but still just like so. I just think it's so good. Like it's good against Thunder Dragons. It's good against Striker. It's good against pretty much everything. It's good against like going second against Altergeist, so that you can like take away possible Sequentious bounces without them even having a target to bounce, which is really good. So there's just like a lot of value for this card. It's just not amazing going first, but going second and just later in the duel, it's really good. So 2 of that, really like that card. Then as far as the traps go, I play 3, Desperado. I actually used to only play 2 of this card because I was like, oh, it's 2018, it's 2019, it's a targeting destruction card, but it's a quick effect. Like, we saw what Dryden did in the game. Even if it's a targeting destruction, if it's a quick effect and can be activated pretty much at any point on your opponent's turn, it's worth it, because your opponent's not going to be able to get into a card with protection like that fast enough, where you'll already pop something before they get there. So this card's just really good. It helps break boards. It's a good disruption if you go first. Just really good card. You want it at all times, and also with Desires. With 2, it's too important as just a free removal card that, like, I would get too nervous with 2, that, like, I would always want access to at least 1, like try and always keep 1 in the deck to search it out if I need it. Then I play 3, Last Stand. This could be arguably a 2 of in the deck, but I really like this card because it just says when a spell or trap card is activated, just negate and destroy it. Straight up. As long as you control the magical musket monster. You can just negate any spell or trap and destroy it. So I love that it's just a no-no to any single spell or trap. It's just so powerful. I don't think I need to explain why this is a 3 of. And then I play 1 Dancing Needle, and I would also consider playing 2 of this just because it's actually really good. It's like DD Crow, but it's on steroids. This card literally says just target up to 3 cards in any graveyard and banish them. 3 whole cards. So against Striker, you banish the Ray, you banish 2 spells. They may not have 3 spells in grave anymore, and they may not be able to get 3 spells in grave anymore, and just hurts them, the advantage, like their advantage train speed, I guess, because they try to turbo it out so that they can get all that extra value off their spells. But then, like, if as soon as they get 3 engraved, you banish 3, they're literally just like, shit. Oh. It's okay against Thunder Dragons. You have to use it very selectively because they do gain their effects on banishment, but they're hard ones returns. If you banish ones that have already activated their effects, then they won't get them again. Altergeist has value as well. Altergeist do. They do things involving the graveyard, so it's pretty decent there. And those are like your 3 main matchups, and almost everything. I mean, honestly, I could list off all the matchups. Those are the 3 main decks, but everything uses the graveyard in some way, shape, or form. Trickstars, Paleos, True Dracos, even, like, everything uses the graveyard somewhat. So this card is a 1 of at least. You search it if you need it. Unless the meta was like specifically a ton of graveyard stuff, I think we're good to leave this here. And I already talked about the 2 impermanents. So that's the 40 card deck that I have right now. I went through like the list of like all spell cards in the game, and I didn't see anything else that was like too amazing spell card wise. That's like just like generic. And I wish it was, but like unfortunately the way the deck is, it forces you to play certain types of cards. So there's just not a ton of cards you even like can try and wiggle in. But still, I love what the deck does. I just wish I could be a little more spicy with it. It's just hard to be spicy with a deck like this that has to play the way it does. Anyway, as far as the extra deck goes, we've got 1 Linkuriboh. That is for instant fusion. You'll see for the targets in a minute. I play some Nightmares, Cerberus, Phoenix, Unicorn. Pretty basic, just removal cards. And 1 Boral Sword. You don't go into this very often, but every once in a while with instant fusions, with Ties of the Brethren, with just like a longer game where you just continually normal summon every turn and get another monster on board every turn, you just end up with enough monsters to go into Boral Sword, and it does come up, just not every game. It's not your main win condition, but it can be a win condition. So I think it's important to have just in case. As far as instant fusion targets go, I play more than probably you'd think. I do play 4. I play Millenniumize Restrict, which pretty much you summon this going first, and this pretty much will keep you from being able to be hit by hand traps. So it just makes you hand trappable. So you summon this, you normal Caspar, you search with Caspar, and even if your opponent had Ash, you would just shut it down with this card anyway, and then you make Linkuriboh with this so that you at least keep a monster for it. That's where the Linkuriboh comes in, because it's level 1, because it would be destroyed on the end phase. But yeah, good card there. And then Thousand Eyes Restrict is like the same thing, but for going second. This card just says like take an opponent's monster and equip it to itself, and then you link it off to get rid of this guy and your monster for a Linkuriboh. So you just got a Linkuriboh, your opponent lost any 1 monster. So worth it to me. It's more or less a +1 in my eyes. Ragin is there for very specific situations, like maybe you open Instant Fusion, but you didn't open a single other monster. Going into Ragin, to me, is more is better play than going into like a restrict, like a, you know what I mean, a Millenniumized Restrict or a Thousandized Restrict, and going into Link Karibo, because otherwise your only monster is going to be Link Karibo, but otherwise I can summon him. You can flip himself face down, and then because he's face down, he won't be destroyed by instant fusion on the end phase anymore. So it's at least a 2400 booty instead. And next turn, if your opponent is for some reason unable to out him, he can come back up, and then he's a walking Book of Moon on either player's turn, which is pretty powerful actually if he does make the like round trip to the next turn. So I didn't want to play him just for those specific like terrible hands where hopefully he can be enough to, you know, protect me in those specific situations against, you know, certain decks that can't put a ton of damage on board. Then I play one of this level 3 Dragoness. This could be any level 3 fusion target. It's literally just there if like I need to make a rank 3. There's no fiends, so I can't make DDD Stone King Darius with this, but he's like a pseudo Borreload. If you don't know what he does, if he attacks a monster in the battle phase, you attach material. He can't be destroyed by battle, but you destroy the opponent's monster. It's just non-targeting destruction, pretty much. So cards that can't be targeted, this card helps you out, and then your opponent takes what, like 500 damage? Yeah, after that. So, and you can do that twice, so he's decent. He comes up for sure every once in a while. One Mech-Whipped Engineer. You know, just protecting stuff against certain decks that have to use destruction to out stuff. And then one Super Quantal Mech Beast Grand Pulse. Much more defensive with 2800 defense, which is really nice over Phoenix. And it just doesn't force you to discard. If you don't have a discard, or you have a card that like you yourself are like, I can't discard this because I lose if I don't have this card in my hand or whatever, you can go into this instead of Phoenix to pop something. Is what it is. And then honestly the last 3 targets could literally just be like Cherries targets. You could play Super Poly and play some Super Poly targets. You could play what was the last thing? There's one more thing. Oh, you could play like a Scapegoat, the one of Scapegoat, ooh, and play a couple more Link, like a Link Spider, you know, Underclock or whatever, and just play a couple more solid Links that would make, you know, Scapegoat worth. And I'd still consider Scapegoat. I mean, why not? I mean, it's a one of, but you don't really use any of this extra deck outside of, you know, the instant fusion targets. So not much to say here until the new the Link monster comes out, which we'll talk about right here. So we have Bloody Crown, which is a trap that is coming out in Dark Neostorm in a couple months. Just wanted to bring it up real quick that this could be a possible card you play in your deck. It just says once per turn. It's a continuous trap, by the way. Once per turn, you can special summon any magical musket monster from your hand. Then your opponent's main monster zone in that same column cannot be used until the end of the turn. So very specific. Link plays can be cut off with this card. Ooh, bless me. All right. It's not a crazy card, but it does help with specific hands where you open up a bunch of magical musketeers to help just get them on the board quicker. And then for the most important card is Magical Musketeer Max. This guy is so important. He's so good. If you don't know what he does, he's a Link 1, so any of the musketeers can go into him. On summon, you can either add magical musket spells and traps with different names from your deck to your hand up to the number of monsters your opponent controls, or you can special summon magical musket monsters with different names straight from the deck up to the number of spells and traps your opponent controls. So whether your opponent's playing a heavy monster strategy or a heavy spell and trap strategy, you either special summon straight from the deck or you just search. And just like the capabilities of this card can either be like, this card can be like up to a +5. Right then and there, special 5 monsters. Right then and there, search 5 of these cards, which is crazy because you only play 5 different ones. So that's insane. That's so insane to me. He's insane. He raises the ceiling of the deck so much and the grindability of the deck. So I can't wait for him to come out. Devil's Deal is an interesting card. This one is out right now, but it's something I wanted to bring up. It just pretty much says, well, it's on the field. Magical Musketeers cannot be destroyed by card effects. Yeah. Okay, and that's mostly what it is, protection. It's usually good only against matchups like True Draco that don't really have removal outs. Too many removal outs, I should say, outside of like destruction, so it can be a problem for decks like True Dracos. But everything else, like there's so much non-destruction removal nowadays that this card just got phased out of like the main deck. It just wasn't worth anymore. And then Security Dragon, but I wouldn't play Security Dragon until this guy comes out, just because he points down, and Security Dragon needs to be co-linked to be able to bounce something. But definitely play Security Dragon when Magical Musketeer Max comes out. But until then, we don't have a due date for Max. Hopefully we find out it comes out in Dark Neostorm with Blade Crown. I think that would make sense for them to come out together. But when he does, oh, I'm going to be so pumped. The deck gets so much extra, like, boost off of that without even having to, like, add cards to your main deck or anything. So, guys, that's the deck list. That's my Magical Musketeer build. Let me know what you think down below. And please, like, I've had trouble finding, like, I wanted to make this list, you know, spicier than this because it seems very basic, and it is, but honestly, I just had trouble because of, like, the way the deck works, finding different cards to play. But if you could think of something and you have some suggestions down below for the main deck or the extra deck, I have trouble with the extra deck as well, like just finding things that were even like ever worth going into. You know what I mean? Let me know down below. Let me know what you think. All right, please do. And subscribe if you haven't to the channel, because I got more deck profiles coming. I got more news videos coming. This YCA Chicago was flipping insane, like just absolutely crazy. And I love you. Thanks for watching. Peace, guys.